Welcome to Now in the 90s, where we look at the game releases of 30 years ago today. This week, Mega Man again, motorcycle combat, and going back to the sewers. Hi, I'm your host Jared, and today is December 30th, 1992. Squeaking in one last game of the year is Capcom. Released on December 29th, 1992, was Mega Man 5 for the NES. Mega Man 5 continues the story of Mega Man by basically having the exact same story as every other Mega Man. Dr. Wily has made 8 more robot masters for Mega Man to defeat in any order. He'll run and jump to get through all of their stages, acquire their powers upon defeat, and use those to exploit the weaknesses of every boss. Mega Man can still slide and charge up his Mega Buster, but a few things have been added to his arsenal. The Rush Coil now springs his robot dog up with him, allowing Mega Man to jump from there. He also has a new companion, the bird Beat. Finding every letter of Mega Man 5 in the 8 stages unlocks a Beat, who can be summoned to automatically attack enemies on the screen. Mega Man 5 was developed to intentionally be a more accessible entry in the franchise. It was made to be much easier than previous games. It's why the fully charged Mega Buster has such a huge shot. It charges up faster than it did before, and the bigger sprite made it easier for players to hit their targets. Also introduced was the M-Tank. Unlike the E-Tank, which can be used to restore Mega Man's life whenever he needed, or the W-Tank, which can restore his special weapon energy, the M-Tank fully restores both. And if it's used while already at maximum life and energy, the M-Tank turns all on-screen enemies into extra lives. The special weapons all kind of suck though. The Charge Kick just made you take more hits whenever you use it, the Power Stone is impossible to hit anything with, and the Water Wave can't even be used in the air. That said, as a kid, I loved the upside down parts of Gravity Man's stage. Much like the previous entries, Capcom held a design contest for some of the Robot Masters to be created by fans. It got 130,000 different entries. One of the winners was Crystal Man, drawn by a young Yusuke Murata, who would also go on to be the artist for the manga series One Punch Man. Look, there was a new Mega Man game every year starting with 1990's Mega Man 3, and franchise fatigue was real. Still, Mega Man 5 reviewed positively when it came out, with Nintendo Power awarding it a 3.9 out of 5, and Electronic Gaming Monthly giving it some pretty high scores, but noted that it's starting to get pretty tired and that the series should, quote, jump to 16 bits already. Imagine their surprise in about 1 year from now. Electronic Arts was still showing some love to the Sega Genesis. Also released this week in 1992 for the console was Road Rash 2. Road Rash 2 is a sequel to the motorcycle racing game. Hop on your bike into illegal street races, avoiding traffic, boulders, cows, other racers, and the police as you try to take first place. Use your prize money to upgrade your bike, buy nitros, and get taunted by other racers. Throw those taunts back into their faces by beating the crap out of them, punch them, kick their bikes, steal their own weapons to use against them. Sometimes you win by hitting the finish line in first place. Other times you win because you made sure you're the only surviving racer. Road Rash 2 is a follow-up to Road Rash 1 from 1991 and has a lot of much needed improvements over the original. There's more variety in the courses you race on, from Vermont to Alaska to Hawaii. There are 15 obtainable motorcycles and a chain was added as a weapon. The biggest improvement was done to the 2-player mode. The original had it as 2 players taking turns, and Road Rash 2 has 2-player simultaneous play, with each player taking half of the screen and getting half the frames per second. I loved this game as a kid. One of my childhood friends had a Sega Genesis and owned Road Rash 2, and we had a blast with it. We would play 2 players and make it as cooperative as possible. He'd win the race and I would focus on killing the computer opponents to help make sure he would win. As kids, we were not bothered at all by the choppy graphics. We were having too much fun. Advertising for Road Rash 2 was weird though. The magazine page basically said that, hey, Road Rash 2 now has a 2-player mode, and encouraged you to beat up your dad in-game. Road Rash 2 was developed in a single year, always intending to be on store shelves before Christmas of 1992, and they barely made it. It was enough time to make a solid sequel that reviewed super well. GamePro magazine gave it high scores in every category. Electronic Gaming Monthly rated it pretty well. Every reviewer praised the new simultaneous multiplayer mode, a much needed addition. They also all said the same thing. It was too similar to the first one. Maybe they would have had more fun if they didn't play it with their dad or whatever, I don't know. Road Rash would go on to get numerous sequels and ports. Perhaps the weirdest one is that the popularity of Road Rash allowed Electronic Arts to create a spin-off series to capitalize on another major early 90s trend, rollerblading. In 1994, they used the Road Rash 2 engine to create Skitchin, which is Road Rash, but on rollerblades. Radical. Speaking of radical, released this week in December of 1992, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist for the Sega Genesis. Hyperstone Heist is another side-scrolling beat-em-up starring the Ninja Turtles. Take control of Leo, Mike, Don, or Raph to beat up hundreds of Foot Clan soldiers and several iconic bosses at the end of each stage. Jump, kick, shoulder tackle, and do that thing where you grab them and slam them back and forth to hit nearby foes. Although there is no throwing enemies at the screen. Hyperstone Heist was based largely off of Konami's hit arcade game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, but is not a direct port, even though it uses a lot of the same graphics and the exact same music. Whereas the other one is about the turtles going through time, Hyperstone Heist is about the Shredder shrinking down the city for whatever evil purposes. Also, in the intro sequence, I have never seen the Shredder look so shredded. God damn! Hyperstone Heist takes Turtles in Time stages and combines them or remixes them all together. This means the stages are way longer, but there's also fewer of them. 5 in total. It also means bosses are switched around. For example, the stage 1 boss is Leatherhead. You fight Rocksteady twice, but no Bebop, Baxter Stockman before he becomes a fly, and in a surprising addition, Tatsu from the first and second live-action TMNT movies is a boss. Now, there is a reason for this. This is still around the time that Nintendo had a tyrannical grip over certain third-party publishers. They basically demanded that certain games have at least a year of timed exclusivity on the Super NES. But there were workarounds though, as done by companies like Capcom and Konami. See, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist isn't a copy-pasted port of Turtles in Time like the one on the SNES. It's so different, it's essentially its own new game. At least this was the excuse Konami used to get a Ninja Turtles game onto the Sega Genesis and avoid the ire of Nintendo's lawyers. It's a good thing they did too, because Hyperstone Heist is a really good Sega game. It graced the cover for the January 1993 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, where inside they reviewed the game with lots of praise. While they understandably compared it to its Super Nintendo cousin, lamenting the loss of the enemy to screen throwing and less levels, it was still seen as a solid Sega game with fun two-player modes. Hyperstone Heist would remain on the Sega Genesis and would not see a port or even any kind of downloadable release. However, it would finally become available on modern consoles in August of 2022 when it was included in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. And with the final releases of the year, here's Editor Dylan.
The Dual Test Drive 2 came out this week, and it's more relaxed than your typical driving game on the SNES. It's got neat little details like bugs occasionally splatting on your windshield and a working rear view mirror. The other SNES release this week was Musya, the classic Japanese tale of horror. The genre and premise alone has hidden gem potential written all over it. In terms of sound, gameplay, and general vibes, I'd compare it to something like Castlevania or the Ghouls and Ghosts and Goblins series. The main difference is the slower pacing and the absolute slap in the face to Sir Isaac Newton. Look at these physics-defying moon jumps. Musya's out here embarrassing Mario in front of everybody on his own console of all places. F-117A Stealth Fighter is your standard NES flight combat sim, complete with all the NES jank you could muster. The cool cutscenes and open mission structure, while ambitious, it wasn't anything we haven't seen done way better on newer hardware. Another NES game that got way too ambitious was Tiny Toon Adventures Cartoon Workshop. Konami wanted in on that Mario Paint demographic and slapped the Tiny Toons license on a half-baked animation drag and drop fest. It's almost 1993, and you think people who've seen 16-bit animation will want to buy an 8-bit game where its main gimmick is just to look at it? What's the word I'm looking for? Bold. Or stupid, you be the judge. But Konami redeemed themselves with Batman Returns on the NES. I played the hell out of the Super Nintendo version, but this one is still a solid beat 'em up. It's got that classic licensed Konami charm to it, and I feel like you know exactly what I'm talking about. Atari managed to sneak in one more Lynx game this year. Who likes Dirty Harry? Well, too bad we couldn't get the license, so Dirty Larry Renegade Cop will have to do. Here's the thing with Lynx games. They're mostly functional, with nice visuals, decent audio, and has a solid premise. I've played a few for the show, and they all shared that quality of non-offensive game design, but I barely remember any of them. Nothing too bad to stand out, but nothing feels inspired or unique, and this game's no different. Hopefully next year, some truly standout titles will grace the handheld. But until then, we have a total of 9 games released on these 4 consoles this final week in 1992. I'm truly excited for what next year may bring, not only for the games we cover, but for the new channel as a whole. If it continues to grow, then we can make improvements like extra segments, longer episodes, or even brand new types of content. Whatever lays ahead, I just want to say thanks. Thank you, Jared, for giving me an outlet to express my creativity as I continue to improve and learn. Thank you, co-writer David, for helping me out with asset hunting and last-minute fixes. And thank you, you, for watching the show and revitalizing my passion for making content again. You've allowed me to work on something I truly enjoy, and hopefully we can keep improving the show and more people can enjoy watching it just as much as I enjoy making it. Now I need to get some crackers because that was a lot of cheese, but thanks again and I'll see you in 1993.
Thank you, Dylan. In the Collector's Corner, Mega Man 5 is this week's biggest value gainer. It was released with a suggested retail price of the usual $59.99, but now the cartridge alone is worth $140. And a complete in-box copy is worth $500. Of the Mega Man games 1 through 6, Mega Man 5 is worth the most. Real Rash 2, however, is way too common. You can find a copy for only $13, and it's only $10 more for a complete one. Hyperstone Heist is another solid value Sega game. It's worth about $60 these days, and well over $200 for one with the box and the manual. And that's it for today. Next week, we are done looking at the games of 1992 because it's a new year and we get to start talking about the games of 1993. I'm your host, Jared, and this was Now in the 90s. Thank you so much for watching Now in the 90s. Please like the video and leave a comment down below and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you already are a subscriber, thank you so much and consider checking out our Now in the 90s Patreon. You ever wonder why so many Sega Genesis games were taller and had that weird yellow tab on the side? Well, that's because these games are from EA. It has their logo on there.